Hello world, I'm here today to try and give you what is a more definitive review of the Rega Elicit R amplifier than I gave a few years ago.
Well, hello world.
33, 45, spin those records round. 33, 45.
All the best in hi-fi reviews.
Spin those records round.
Stick to me for the best advice.
Stick to me for the best advice. 33, 45.
You're with me, Mark P. Muss.
Or Marky P, or Bad Boy Marky, or just plain Mark. Now, there are certain cars, such as my old 1 litre 3-cylinder Daihatsu Charade that I had when I first started driving many years ago, round about 1856. And yeah, if you got stuck behind a tractor, you would have to really plan your manoeuvre in absolute theoretical detail. You know, Jerry here, Japs over there, right eyes down here, and you'd really have to, you know, think about it really hard. And then when the time came, you'd have to floor it, and then you'd get this huge noise from the engine as it was, you know, like you know, a diesel on steroids or something. And you just think, fucking hell, will you just move? Will you just get on with it? I don't want this thing to stop! You know, and, you know, the Elicit R, which I've been using for a couple of years in terms of amplifiers, is not quite in that category, okay? If you were talking about the differences between a Rega Elicit R and an Elicit R, okay, now the Elicit R is one step above the Elicit R in price in amplifier range, and it's double the price, and or more or less. It's not quite double the price, but more or less anyway. Who needs money? Who needs to talk about money? I've actually bought an Elicit R, folks. Okay, I've retired from teaching now. I'm in a position where I've got a little bit of money, and I haven't got to worry quite as much as I've been doing over the last few months. So I have bought an Elicit R amplifier. Okay, and I will let you into another secret as well. I've also bought a pair of PMC speakers, but I will I'll talk about those in another review because I haven't got them yet. Okay, I brought the Elicit R home yesterday, but the speakers are being delivered. So yeah, if you were talking about the Elicit R and the Elicit R, and I've done this before, okay, I've spoken about it in reviews before, because the last time that I heard the two amplifiers together was in Audio T a few years ago now, and I was listening with Rega's RS3 speakers, which were Rega's bread and butter floor standing speaker, and at the time I had Rega R3 speakers, which were the range before, but they were still small floor standers, and I just felt that those speakers didn't do the amplifier justice, the Elicit R particularly. I felt that the bass was far too prominent, and it just didn't sound like it was having as much fun as the Elicit R. Okay, so in other words, it's not quite Daihatsu Charade and Mercedes, it's more like BMW and Mercedes, in that the BMW will still give you a comfortable ride, but it will aim to thrill you at the same time, whereas the Mercedes endeavours to cushion you from whatever may befall. Okay, but both extremely competent vehicles. Okay, now talking a little bit about where the Elicit R kind of fits into Rega's kind of history, as it were. In the late 80s, early 90s, something like that, Rega developed their first amplifier, and it was called the Elicit. And as the years went by, they introduced this classic kind of range, which for me was a classic kind of range because it's vintage, it's, you know, back in my youth kind of thing, of the Brio, which was the basic, the Luna, which was a cut above the basic, the Mirror, which was a cut above that, and then you had some pre-power combos and monoblock combos as well, which Rega don't make anymore. And those went through a few incarnations, and we're still on the Brio. It's now no longer called the Brio R. I think it's just called the Brio because it's had a minor kind of revision to it, and they've put a headphone socket on it. But to put it bluntly, the Elicit kind of came back in a Mark II, guys. When would that have been? Late noughties, I think, very late noughties, perhaps early 2010s. And then it was revamped again into the Elicit R. Okay, now the Elicit Mark II got some pretty not bad reviews, but just unenthusiastic reviews. And I think that in terms of hi-fi people, the reviewers really weren't all that keen on it, that they felt that there were other amplifiers that could do a better job. But the Elicit R has changed all that. It's an absolute sort of star performer. It's a reviewer's favourite. I've now got Rega RS5 speakers hooked up at the moment. They're about to disappear and go on eBay. But with the Elicit R in place, as I say, the whole thing just is far more relaxed and far more even-handed in its response. Now, I say that because the demo material that I used yesterday in Audio T were the following. Beg your pudding, I'm back. Started out with Weavy Thunder, Stevie Wonder. And this is the Songs in the Key of Life CD. I don't actually listen to it all that often, really, but I've used it as demo material in the past. For some reason, hi-fi stores seem to be very reluctant to let you demo things with records. And they told me to bring CDs with me and, you know, use the Saturn-R CD player, which is the one that I've got up here with me. So I brought CDs with me. Pastime Paradise, okay, it really is my favourite Stevie Wonder track, and it's also a really good test for hi-fi. And the reason being is that as the song progresses, you have a Hare Krishna choir joining in, singing the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And then you get this sort of Christian gospel choir joining in with them, but they're singing We Shall Overcome. And Stevie Wonder is still singing away. And the reason I liked it on the Elicit R was because it managed to somehow make complete sense of that recording. I've said in the past that other hi-fi components have also managed to make sense of it, but you know, somehow or other it just gets more kind of, the elements become clearer. The Hare Krishna choir are obviously quite far back in the recording space, and the Christian sort of gospel choir-y thing is in front of them, and then you have Stevie. Okay, now, yes, yesterday I was trying to ascertain what speakers I wanted as well as what amplifier I wanted, And so I'll have to talk about that in another review. But put it this way, I was listening on PMC speakers yesterday, okay? And the soundstage that was conjured up was really quite magical. And as well as that, the Elicit was also making a very good job of telling you that somebody was actually hitting bongo drums on the left hand side. Okay, on my RS5 speakers, it's apparent, but it's not quite as. Okay, that stage depth is not quite as with the PMCs, but it's still there because I listened to it again this morning. Okay, and yeah, it's just ever so slightly kind of not quite as lurid detail, as it were. I don't mean lurid in a negative sense, by the way. It wouldn't be an Audio T demonstration without some cooler shaker. I have to bring them in all the time. This is the 15th anniversary remaster on CD. I was asked for my opinions as to this and the vinyl. Now, again, I listened to this album very recently with my it's not that old, it's a day old, darling, Elicit R amplifier, and it had bite and energy and detail, but there are a couple of key moments in Tatva in particular where you knew that the Elicit R and PMCs were really kind of doing their job. Just before the final verse of Tatva, the bit that says, "For you will be tomorrow," that is preceded by what I always thought was just a little guitar twang that goes bow like that just before that verse starts. Okay, it goes like that, but in tune, put it that way. It's actually a guitar line. It doesn't stop in the way that I always felt it did. Okay, and whilst we're talking about starting and stopping and stopping and starting and stuff, the timing with this is so on the money. The bass is in tune. Okay, the Elicit R kind of runs out of a little bit of puff when producing bass. This doesn't. Yes, it's more prominent, and the PMCs will kind of resolve that for me. The RS5s, there's a slight imbalance, but it's not going to sort of make you feel uncomfortable kind of imbalance, but there is a slight imbalance which is not as apparent with the PMCs. The treble is very, very, very smooth. It never ever gets harsh. It really doesn't. And believe you me, I've tried it at home as well. Okay, the bass is far more even. The treble is really, really smooth. Okay, the vocals I didn't feel were projected with the enthusiasm of the Elicit R. However, it might well be that the Elicit R was kind of over egging the cake, as it were, whereas the Elicit R is presenting things more as they are. Okay, certainly there's no shoutiness at all. There's, it's not like, one of those YouTube videos where in order to get their point across, reviewers feel they have to shout at you like this all the time. And no, not at all. Not at all. You can listen to it for a long time. Okay. yeah, so I listened to that one. Then I put on, I suppose, the complete opposite in a way, Smoke and Mirrors title track from this album by Brett Dennen. Again, these, my sort of seasoned viewers will recognise half these CDs because I use them a lot of the time for reviewing stuff. So yeah, Smoke and Mirrors on the on this album here. It's always been just bizarre, really. Well, not really bizarre. The way that some people, when mastering CDs, and it's far more prevalent than you might think, feel that they have to over-egg the bass in order to make it sound, quote, hi-fi on things like the new Apple speaker or a pair of, computer speakers or something like that, and no, you don't need to. You don't need to. The Elicit R really never had a brilliant time with Smoke and Mirrors. And, you felt like when, the first bass note comes in around about the first chorus and you go, like that, ooh, I best turn it down. With the Elicit R, the bass is there. It's much more tuneful. It's probably bassier, but you don't feel like it's having this huge job trying to produce that amount of bass. It's just taking it in its stride, really. A bit like the Mercedes, really. It's going to give you all those thrills. They're all there and whatnot, but they're just not jarring at you in the way. And I don't mean to make that, can you tell I'm really doing my best not to slag the Elicit R off, because the Elicit R is a superb amplifier. Okay, the Elicit R just does things slightly differently. Okay, so yeah, that track there. And again, vocals beautiful. And via the PMC speakers, no, I won't talk about the PMC speakers, otherwise I won't have another video to make. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And then, this is one, the last couple of recordings that I'm going to talk about from what I did yesterday, I haven't played yet. So I will talk about this one and this one when I review the speakers, because there's something wonderful that happens with both of those that I haven't quite managed to sort of nail yet, but when I get my new speakers I'll tell you all about them. Okay, they should be here tomorrow, I think. Right, so that's that one. When I got home, the first thing I did, because I just wanted to check that everything was working, gosh, I can still feel it in my arms. I can still feel, and I didn't actually have to carry it that far, but it's 13 kilos, which for me is jolly heavy, okay? I really need to get myself to the gym, but yeah, 13 kilos to me was jolly heavy. And I hate to say it, but I had to also get a taxi home from the railway station, being as how I live 2 minutes from the railway station. You've hardly got time to blink and you're there. And I actually had to get a taxi once I got off the train, because carrying it over the railway bridge and everything was just right. So yeah, when I got home, the first thing I did, and it was only because it was on the turntable, I put a bit of Gary Newman's Splinter album on, side 2 of Gary Newman's Splinter album, and I just thought, oh, that's really smooth. It's really creamy. It's not trying to impress you. The Elicit R, again, will give you a bunch of thrills when you listen to Gary Newman, but it will also give you some moments where you think, "Ooh, I ought to turn it down." Things like the bass lines, some of the songs on there. I don't really know the album all that well, but some of the songs on there, the bass is going like onk 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 onk, and all these synthesized textures and everything, and you think, with the Elicit R, perhaps best turn it down. The Elicit R, perhaps best turn it up. That's the difference. That's the difference in a nutshell. You think, I could get away with this being a bit louder, and that is, I suppose, if you had to, it's just a feeling, a sense inside you, okay, as opposed to a hi-fi trick that it's pulling off, I think, in a sense, it's partly because, okay, we have to again sort of delve back in history from the late 60s. Now, I wasn't around in the late 60s. I was only just born. Okay, so again, I'm going by, my kind of research into hi-fi and stuff. But as people were making the transition from delightfully British valve amplifiers, not even tube amplifiers, but valve amplifiers, as it were, the quads of the day, and which have this very kind of silky smooth sound, can go loud on very, very few watts, 5 watts per channel, will still produce a huge amount of volume if that's being used efficiently. And that's what valve amplifiers did. Small amount of power, but very, very efficiently used. Whereas the first transistor amplifiers were what we call Class A amplifiers. In that, I know nothing at all. I cannot explain it at all. But it's just the design of the amplifier circuits and transformers, and how the amplifiers deliver their power. And there are certain ones. There's Class A, Class B. There's Class AB. There's even a Class D and a Class G amplifier. I think the latest RCAM amplifier is a Class G. Class D amplifiers have a lot of digital circuitry in them. Okay. The Elicit R attempts to emulate a Class A design. Class A designs, again, could produce an awful lot of volume with relatively little power, but the problem with transistor amplifiers is that a lot of power is just given away in heat. It's just dissipated in heat. And so 20 or 25 watts per channel, I'm thinking of the classic sort of Sugden Class A designs, could give you the same, I suppose, as maybe something like a 10 watt valve amp, but it just got extremely hot because a lot of that power would just be going away in heat. The Elicit R is a Class A design, but it's an emulated Class A design in that it is essentially the same idea, but it can give you a lot more power. It's like 105 watts per channel, something like that, which is more than enough to power any speaker that you care to throw at it. In particular, smaller stand mount speakers. Smaller stand mount speakers require a lot more power than larger speakers, because in order to get them to sound on song, as it were, and to get them to really sing, they need to be more efficient. And smaller speakers tend to be less efficient. Now, the way that you measure speaker efficiency is at 1 watt, 90 decibels. That is the kind of magic holy grail of a figure. Okay, not many speakers achieve that, but smaller speakers have a harder job. And when you're talking about the way that decibels work, plus or minus 3 is a double or a half of the volume level. So it may well be that a speaker with 86.5 decibels sensitivity at 1 watt of power might not sound a lot less than 90, but in fact it actually is. You know, it's about sort of 2/3 of the volume, as it were. So in other words, the speakers are harder to drive, harder, need more power to get on song. Okay, 105 watts from an Elicit R is more than enough. In fact, the 70 or 80 watts per channel, I think, is it 70, something like that, 72 into 8 ohms power of the Elicit R. It's, again, enough, but as I say, there are times where you're just thinking it's trying very, very hard. It's trying, just trying very, very hard. The Elicit R, no problem. You want Gary Newman, you want thick bass synthesizers, boom, no problem. You want Joe McElderry, great, no problem. And that, as this album opens, this is Here's What I Believe. I can't help it. I just love Joe McElderry. Again, first CD that came to hand. I had to dump my bag of CDs at the bottom of the stairs in my flat because I just couldn't carry it anymore along with that amplifier. And then I got the amplifier set up. And I thought, I can't even be asked to go downstairs and get that bag. So I just grabbed this, which was sitting next to my computer, plopped it on, and the first strums of that guitar, my God, just so realistic. You know, it really is somebody playing a guitar, folks. And then the pizzicato strings, far more staccato. There's no overhang between notes. There's no blurring whatsoever. Plum, 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 plum. Like that. Whereas you just felt that there's just a little bit kind of left over, and a little bit of smearing of notes via the Elicit R. You know, again, you know, it's not a terrible performance from the Elicit R, just that the Elicit R is better. It begs you, turn me up. And when Joe McElderry gets to his high notes and the mixes are getting slightly more complex, boom, it's there. And it can do it. And it just doesn't shout. It doesn't shout, folks. It's beautiful. You just relax. You just have a hot chocolate or a glass of wine. Just enjoy it. Relax. Boom. Superb. Absolutely superb. So then I've watched a bit of telly through this. Voices, very natural. Again, you know, there's nothing that is going to disturb your beautiful equilibrium. Boom, boom, boom. Right. This morning I've played, again, because I wanted to make this video quite quickly, but I've played side 1 of Arrival. Again, just with my Rega speakers, which are going. A key track, really. There are 2 on side 1 of Arrival that are actually quite difficult for hi-fi systems to reproduce. When I Kissed the Teacher and My Love, My Life. Okay, Dancing Queen will energize you regardless of what you play it on. Okay, it's got a very animated bass line with lovely little string bends and stuff like that, and a modest system such as my old P5 and Mira 3 will extract a lot of that detail for you. When I Kissed the Teacher, on the other hand, has a bass line that for some reason is quite sort of hard for speakers to reproduce. There's a slight unevenness there, and when throughout most of the song you hardly think it's there, and then suddenly there are one or two notes which boom at you and you think, oh yeah, they are actually playing the bass. And it's the same in My Love, My Life. The chorus to My Love, My Life, usually this is where, in your typical song structure, the first chorus is where the bass comes in. And, that's, true of My Love, My Life. The first note is actually quite heavy, and then via most systems it seems to disappear until that repeat of that first chorus phrase. So it's like an image passing by, and then like reflections from your mind, and then it comes in again on mind, and then seems to disappear. Whereas actually what's actually happening is that you're getting those very deep notes on the accented parts of those two phrases, but then it's going off and twiddling away and then coming back and sliding back down to that accented note, boom, like reflections of boom, like that, as it were, but in tune. Okay, I do apologise for my singing. Someone complained about it once. Okay, I'm not really very good at singing. I should not really, but I do. It's a similar story in When I Kissed the Teacher. The bass is much more even-handed with the Elicit R, even with these RS5 speakers. You're not getting uncomfortable notes and then the bass disappearing. Okay, another track which I haven't tried yet, but is A Little Respect by Erasure, which is another one which has got, really quite a dense mix, and the bass is kind of, it's a bit like, Ringo Starr when he complained once that during the White Album they were burying the drums so much because they'd just got 8 tracks, so they thought, oh my god, I can put instrument after instrument after instrument after instrument, and Ringo felt that his drums were missing something, so he started banging knitting needles on the chair to get the rhythm in, and accent the rhythm, and that's what I think is probably something like that's going on in the studio. When I Kissed the Teacher, oh yeah, Sven, the bass line is disappearing, and so let's give it a bit of artificial boost. But in giving it that artificial boost, a lot of hi-fi systems just cannot reproduce it. So yeah, there you go, folks. Okay, so at the moment, extremely positive reviews of my Elicit R. Loving it. Absolutely loving it. It's just it's wonderful. It's like a gorgeous cheese and fine wine. In fact, that's what you feel like you should be doing while you're listening. It's not one to be hoovering and and doing the ironing to. It's one just to sit back and enjoy it. Okay, that timing, beautiful, on the money. Just absolutely no forwardness about the mid-range and treble at all. Okay, that might take a little bit of getting used to, because people are so used to having these things shout at them, and they're not shouting. There you go. Hey, Mr. Beaver, why are you beavering around? That was the Cadbury's Caramel advert from like 1979 or something like that. And that's what this amplifier is. You just relax. Have a Cadbury's Caramel. Ta-ra. See you later.